The morning broadcast of Good Morning America buzzed with anticipation as Prince Harry made his entrance onto the set, greeted by polite applause and a warm but measured welcome from George Stephanopoulos. Promoting his newest memoir and continuing public outreach surrounding his advocacy efforts, Harry seemed composed, dressed casually, yet smartly, projecting the image of a man attempting to move forward from the past. The first few moments were courteous, focused on the book's themes: healing, mental health, and freedom from institutional constraints. But George, known for his precise and pointed questioning, quickly moved beyond the surface. Your book mentions being trapped in the royal institution, George began. Do you really believe that, or is it a narrative designed to justify a very public departure? Harry smiled lightly, but with a tense edge. It's how I felt. That was my truth. I lived in a world with no control over my life. George nodded, then countered. But isn't it a bit dramatic to portray yourself as powerless when you were one of the most privileged people on the planet? The atmosphere shifted instantly. Prince Harry tried to maintain his composure. Privilege doesn't negate pain, he replied. Mental health struggles don't care about titles. George raised an eyebrow. Yet many people see you as someone who left immense privilege and responsibility behind, then criticized the very system that made your voice matter. Doesn't that seem contradictory, Harry? Harry leaned forward, his voice firm. I didn't leave responsibility. I left a toxic environment that was damaging my family. George pushed further. But some would say the toxicity you describe is the same tradition millions admire. You called the royal press machine soulless, but isn't it part of what made your global platform possible? Harry's tone grew sharper. So I should stay silent because of my surname? George responded, no, but should you monetize the fallout? The audience gasped subtly. Harry's face hardened. Use my experiences to help others feel less alone, George shot back. Or to sell books, give interviews, and curate your own version of reality. It was clear the interview had taken a confrontational turn, far from a friendly morning chat. Tension climbed. As George brought up the Oprah Winfrey interview, you and Meghan made serious claims on Oprah, accusations of racism, neglect, isolation, but critics say you never provided concrete names or details. Why not? Harry's body stiffened slightly. We shared what we felt safe to share. George didn't let up. But don't public accusations demand transparency? When reputations are at stake? Harry hesitated, then said, it was about raising awareness, not pointing fingers. George leaned in. Are protecting yourselves from legal consequences? The silence was thick. Harry's lips tightened. We weren't hiding. We were trying to be responsible, George added. Yet the damage was done, relationships fractured, an institution put on trial in the court of public opinion, and millions left wondering what was true and what was performance. Harry took a deep breath but didn't respond immediately. The camera zoomed in as the two men sat in what felt like a chess match. Each word a strategic move. The interview moved into more recent headlines: Harry's legal battles with the British press and his criticism of media intrusion. You talk a lot about media toxicity, George said, but you also actively use media to tell your story. Netflix documentaries, books, podcasts. Aren't you doing the very thing you condemn? Harry's face was a mix of frustration and resolve. There's a difference between controlling your story and having it distorted, George countered. But doesn't controlling your story also mean crafting a favorable narrative and avoiding the hard questions? Harry shook his head. It means being heard accurately. George's voice stayed calm but cut deeper. Or selectively. Because you've walked out of interviews before when the questions got uncomfortable. Harry snapped back. I've walked out when it stopped being about truth and started being a media trap. George replied, that's convenient, especially for someone who says they value transparency. The audience could feel the temperature rising. Harry was now sitting more rigidly, his jaw tense, his responses shorter. George then brought up Meghan Markle. Let's talk about your wife for a moment, he said carefully. She's been central to your journey, but she's also polarizing. Some see her as courageous, others as manipulative. How do you respond to that duality? Harry immediately tensed. She's been treated unfairly from the start. She was scapegoated, George responded. But is every criticism scapegoating? Isn't that a dangerous oversimplification? Harry fired back. She endured racism and character assassination. George nodded but added, and yet, there are questions about stories she's told that were later challenged, about her treatment of staff, about contradictions. Doesn't accountability work both ways? Harry's face darkened. You're echoing the same toxic narratives that damaged her. George responded, while reflecting legitimate concerns from people who worked with her. The crowd was stunned into silence. For a split second, Harry appeared genuinely shaking, visibly blinking back emotion, before regaining his posture. That brief flash of vulnerability didn't go unnoticed. George pressed further, shifting to Harry's recent statement that America was more like home than the UK. Do you see yourself as American now? He asked. You've talked about freedom, safety, and opportunity here, but many Americans also question why a royal who rejected monarchy still uses his titles and status in public life. Harry replied coldly, I didn't choose the title. I was born with it. George shot back, but you use it on book covers, press releases, interviews. You sign contracts as the Duke of Sussex. Isn't that using the crown without serving it? Harry's irritation was visible. Redefining what service looks like. You can serve outside of an institution. George leaned forward. But are you redefining or just repackaging royalty for profit? The remark cut deep. Harry was visibly caught off guard, the force of the question clearly landing. His fingers tapped his knee anxiously as he looked away briefly, recalibrating. His next move. The clash deepened as George probed Harry's involvement with tech firms, charity boards, and private speaking engagements. You've aligned with major corporations, some criticized for ethics violations, George said. How do you balance advocacy with those partnerships? Harry replied. We're careful about who we work with. George raised his voice slightly. But ArcuWall partnered with platforms accused of censoring speech and exploiting data. Doesn't that conflict with your message of freedom and safety? Harry said defensively. It's a process. We're building bridges, not burning. Them, George shot back. Or are you building a brand under the guise of activism? Harry responded tersely. We're creating positive change. George, not missing a beat, added. But when that change comes with multi-million-dollar deals, many wonder, is it about impact or income? Harry was silent for a beat too long. His lips parted, but he didn't speak right away. The hesitation was telling. Then came the moment that shifted everything. George asked, You said your biggest regret was not leaving the monarchy sooner. Do you regret anything about how you've handled things since? Harry, clearly emotional, took a deep breath. I regret how it affected my family. Regret the pain. George followed up instantly. And do you think you've taken responsibility for your role in that pain? The question hit hard. Harry's voice cracked slightly. I've owned what I could. George paused, then said quietly, But have you apologized to the people who say you betrayed them? Harry looked down, the first time in the interview. He didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was low. I've tried. They weren't ready to hear it. That moment, raw and unscripted, left the audience stunned. Some viewers watching live claimed to see tears in his eyes. Whether real or not, it added an entirely new layer to the emotional battle unfolding on national TV. The tension remained. Heavy as George wrapped the interview. Prince Harry, thank you for your time, he said. Harry gave a small nod, visibly drained. I came here to speak my truth, he said quietly. George replied, and we gave you the space. But truth requires scrutiny. The closing shot captured Harry sitting in silence, staring ahead. No longer the composed royal rebel, but a man exposed, maybe even humbled. As the credits rolled, social media exploded. Viewers were split. Some hailed George for asking the questions no one else dared, while others accused him of ambushing a guest under the pretense of dialogue. Hashtags like Harry humiliated and GMO clash with royalty began trending worldwide. Clips of Harry's emotional reaction were shared on loop, with pundits and influencers weighing in from every corner of the internet. Just for royal watchers, but for anyone invested in the question, What does it mean to step away from tradition and still claim its privileges? In the aftermath, Buckingham Palace declined to comment, while Arkewell released a short statement, affirming Harry's commitment to mental health advocacy and truth-telling. Meanwhile, ABC faced both praise and backlash for allowing such a high-stakes interview to air live without preconditions. George Stephanopoulos, though composed on screen, reportedly stood by every word, telling sources he believed public figures who shape culture must also be willing to face difficult questions. Prince Harry, for his part, cancelled a few upcoming appearances, citing